What's up everyone, Yellow here, and today I'm going to be showing you my endgame farming build that I use to farm the Dreamstones and do the Tower of Trials in groups. Now, this build is a pure DPS build, and in my last build video, people wanted a detailed breakdown of my equipment, my skills, my augments, and they wanted to know how I was farming the Exalted Earth Realm so fast. So this is going to break everything down, and then I also have a specific Tower of Trials solo build that I'm going to be releasing later this week. So if you enjoyed the video or it helps you out, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more Godfall content, consider subscribing. Let's get into it. Alright, so first, let me show you what this build can do. You'll see in this run, everything pretty much dies instantly. This build is designed for major burst damage, more so than sustainability. Now, I'm also going to show you some options that you have if you want to make this build a more sustainable build to take into the Ascended Tower of Trials, but this build is really just meant to kill everything instantly, and it works best in Dreamstones. And just so you guys know, this is my typical farming spot, the Exalted Earth Realm, which is the 12th Dreamstone on normal difficulty. And every piece of gear that you'll see on this build was dropped from this single farming spot, so farming gear here shouldn't be an issue. So now that you've seen how the build works, let's go ahead and break it down. So the first thing you'll see in this build is it has 4k might, almost no spirit, high crit chance, high crit damage, and high weak point damage. Once I max the build out, I will end up at around 23 to 2400 vitality, and it would be more than sustainable for the tower while doing insane damage. For my weapon, you'll see I'm using Sword of Courage. The reason for this, obviously the effect is terrible and does me no good. However, the fact that it had crit chance on the secondary and weak point damage was enough for me to go ahead and upgrade this. The critical damage helps as well, but basically on your main weapon, you just want as much critical hit chance as possible. Now, ideally, I would be using Drexel's Legacy, which you'll see here. This allows you to gain the Blessing of the Luck whenever you hit an enemy with your Northern technique, which I use literally all the time. The reason that I'm not using this weapon is because it doesn't have any crit chance on the secondary stat. I've had a few of these drop, and until one drops with crit chance, I'm not switching. If you want to use longswords like I am, this is the one that you want to aim for, but really, your weapon of choice is fine, just make sure that it has crit chance. With this build, I don't use polarity, so the second weapon doesn't matter, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on right to the neck piece. The neck piece that I use is the Heartsong Amulet. This is actually a blue amulet that I've upgraded to legendary. The 19% Soul Shatter buildup during Rampage is a great primary effect for this amulet, as it was a blue, and then I got lucky with it being critical hit damage, which allowed me to go ahead and upgrade it further to an epic, and then legendary. I'd say critical hit damage, weak point damage, or critical hit chance is what you're looking for on the secondary effect for you to upgrade this amulet to an epic and then a legendary. Now we're going to move on to the Lion Talisman. This legendary charm is absolutely insane. Whenever you perform a critical hit, gain 6% weapon technique charge and 36% weapon technique charge speed for 10 seconds. This allows your weapon technique to almost always be up. On the secondaries, of course you're looking for crit hit, crit damage, anything like that, but really this charm is so good that if it drops and it doesn't have good secondaries, I would still upgrade it from an epic to a legendary. Obviously, as more of them drop for you, you can be more picky, but this talisman is insane. The next ring that I'm using is Dustlord's Signet. To be honest, it's not a great ring. I'm mainly using this for might because the secondaries are good. In fact, this is one of the easiest legendaries to replace. Personally, I'd recommend if you need more survivability going into Ring of the First Sword. This is a blue ring that drops that gives you overhealth whenever you hit a weak point, and you can get lucky with the secondaries as well. My second ring is the Dreamer's Band. This is actually a blue upgraded to a legendary, but the effect is great. I'm currently receiving a 25% weapon technique charge speed for 10 seconds whenever I parry an enemy. Now, your secondary, you can't get crit hit chance, so just find something that works. I was using dual blades when I initially upgraded this ring. However, now that I'm not using dual blades, I am looking for a better version of this ring to upgrade and start using. The next piece of gear is Archon's Tear. This is really the only life stone that I think fits into this build. This gives you 40% crit hit chance and 130% critical hit damage. The secondary weapon effects are great if you get good ones, but if not, I wouldn't really worry about it as the primary effect is what you're looking for. Now, if you don't have Archon's Tear, I would just pick something out that you believe fits with this build. The primary effect only happens once you heal, and it lasts for 10 seconds. And finally, the banner, Messa's Banderdole. This banner is absolutely insane, is that when you lay it down, it gives you 24% critical hit chance and 56% critical hit damage. Now those numbers can randomly roll just like all the other attributes, but if one drops, this is what you should be using. Now this is an epic banner, so you're only going to have 2 secondaries, and then once you upgrade it to a legendary, you'll get your third. With a high enough crit chance, whenever you drop this banner, you're going to be critting pretty much every single hit for an insane amount of damage. Alright, so now that we've got the gear out of the way, let's go ahead and look at augments. The first thing you might notice is I'm only using 8. The reason for that is because I feel all my might augments are actually necessary, which only left 5 more points. Now if I split that up into a 3 and 1, that's a good option. However, on any augment that uses 5 or more power, once it's upgraded to level 5, you get a full secondary stat. So on my vitality augment, I'm actually getting might as well, which you'll see shortly. Now the first might augment that I have on here is Frostfire. This costs 5 points, and it gives me critical hit damage during Rampage. My secondary ended up being an additional 9% Soul Shatter buildup, so I was quite happy to upgrade this all the way and get the extra vitality. The next augment is another might augment. It's called Evisceration. This gives you the Blessing of Power whenever you perform a critical hit. The Blessing of Power increases your damage by an additional 20%. And with this build, you're almost always critting, meaning you're almost always doing an additional 20% on top of the damage you're already doing. The primary effect on this weapon is so good that even if both secondaries are terrible, I would still use it. If you end up getting good secondaries, consider yourself lucky. The next augment that I have equipped is Spark. This gives me an additional 22% weapon technique charge speed for 10 seconds whenever I hit a weak point. If you find yourself needing more survivability, this is one of the augments that you can swap out. The next augment you'll see is Paradise. This provides a 20% weapon technique charge speed for 10 seconds whenever you perform a critical hit. With this augment, on top of the rest of my build, my weapon technique is pretty much always up and usable. After that, we have my single vitality augment, the Wolf's Fury. This basically gives me some overhealth whenever I parry an enemy, and you'll see that once it's upgraded, it gives a full 102 might. Again, this is the reason that I didn't go with an augment that costs 3 here and then put 1 into Spirit. I'd much rather have the 102 might. Next, we have the legendary augment Carnage. This gives me an additional 3% critical hit damage for every 20 might on adjacent augments. You'll see that where I have it positioned gives me an extra 63% critical hit damage, and all of my secondaries are really good as well. A good replacement option for this augment is Sacred Flame. The reason that I'm not using Sacred Flame is it appears that it's currently bugged and not working as it should. Whenever I equip it, I do not get an additional 75% might on adjacent augments. The next augment you'll see is Force of Nature. This gives you an additional 5% weapon technique charge whenever you defeat an enemy. However, I'm honestly using this mainly because it gives me an additional 20% weak point damage. This is another augment that if you need survivability, I would recommend switching out for possibly an overhealth on hit augment, or moving one of the augments shown earlier into this spot and adding a vitality augment to the white spaces. And finally, the bread and butter of the build, Surety. This is a legendary augment that whenever you hit an enemy with your Northern technique, you expose the enemy's weak point and deal an additional 93% weak point damage the next time you hit a weak point. This is the augment that allows me to use my weapon technique here and pretty much kill the boss right afterwards. If this ends up dropping, don't even worry about the secondaries, just equip it. And finally, my skill tree. The video is already long enough, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, especially because in my other build video, I already highlighted what skills I thought were the best, but pretty much you go full damage here, and then with the additional skill points that I had left over, I gave myself some resistances for survivability, and put some extra points into banner to help my banner be up more often. So that's going to be it for today's video. I know this video was a bit longer than normal. I just got a lot of questions on my last build video asking me to go more into detail, so I really hope this helped you guys out. If you have any questions about the build or anything in the game, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed the video today or learned anything, please hit that like button and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.